Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Navigating the USMC. Today we're going to talk about the 2023 active duty pay chart and subsequent pay charts that come after that. Now, the way you read a pay chart is up and to the right. You're going to read up for your promotions. So, as an enlisted Marine, you start off as an E1. A warrant officer, you start off as a W1. As a commissioned officer, you start off with an O1. Now, as you gain rank, you're going to read the pay scale up. Now we have to the right. The longer you've been in the military is the further you go to the right. The reason that's important is because on the anniversary day of the day that you went to boot camp or officer or TBS, the basic school for commissioned officers, you're going to get a pay raise on that anniversary day. For the first 4 years of service, you're going to get a pay raise every year on your anniversary date. After your 4 years, you're going to move on to every 2 years. You're going to get a pay raise on the anniversary day of the day you went to boot camp. Now, this is very important information. You should understand that because you should know how much you're getting paid. Now, for example, if you're an E3 making $2,259.99 and you're less than 2 years, and then you hit your anniversary day, you're over 2 year mark, you should be getting $2,402.14 per month. If you're not getting that pay, then you have a problem and you need to go to the administration shop and you need to let somebody know, like, hey, I got promoted, or I hit my my anniversary date and I haven't got my pay raise and it's been 3 months. Well, that's a problem. Now, it's not going to be a problem at that point because you're going to get back paid for everything you didn't get. However, you're not going to get it initially. Anyway, it's very important to pay attention to. Now, these pay charts, the numbers that you see based off of the rank, this is the monthly pay. Now, military pay is divided by 2 because you get paid on the 1st of the month and the 15th of the month. So these numbers that you see here, for example, a E1 with 2 years or less, you're going to get paid $1,917.63. You're going to divide that by 2, and you're going to get half of that on the 1st of the month, and you're going to get the other half of that on the 15th of the month. Now, at first glance, $1,917 is not a whole lot of money, but over time, it does kind of stack up. And when you throw in the rest of your benefits and your other allowances, it really does help out. Now, take into consideration that $1,917 as an E1 under 2 years does not take into account your living quarters. It does not take into account your food that you eat. And it does not take into account the uniforms that you're wearing. So let's cover down on some of the additional allowances you get as an active duty military member. So this is straight from the military defense.gov website, and we're going to cover down on some of the allowances, one of them being BAS. Now, BAS is basic allowance for subsistence. It's the money that you're going to get in addition to your paycheck. And once again, that money is going to be divided by 2, and you'll get half of that on the 1st of the month, and you'll get half of that on the 15th of the month. Now, officers get slightly less, typically because they get paid more money, and enlisted members, they do get a little bit more money at $452.56. Now, unlike your rank and your pay and your time in service, where that changes the higher up you go and the longer you've been in, BAS is a flat rate for enlisted Marines. Now, let's talk about BAH. Now, in the military, typically starting off, enlisted Marines, single enlisted Marines, you're going to live in a barracks. So you are not going to get BAH because your housing is already included. So you live in a barracks, which is typically a dorm style housing, and you live there for free. However, if you're married and you're living out in town with your spouse or your spouse and your children, then the military is going to pay you an additional allowance called BAH. Now, here on the screen, I have a BAH calculator, And this is a E3 in the Marine Corps in 2023, and this is the basic allowance for housing calculator. So an E3 living in San Diego will receive, if they're married, $43,668 a year for housing allowance, which comes out to $3,630 a month. Once again, this is going to be cut in half, and you'll get half of that on the first of the month, and you'll get the other half on the 15th of the month. Now, that's a pretty good perk right there. So if you're married and you're living out in town, the military is going to give you $3,600 a month to help pay for your rent or your mortgage. Now, granted, we're talking about San Diego here, and the cost of living in San Diego is pretty expensive. And I'm going to say I highly doubt that $3,600 a month is going to get you a 5-star living situation in San Diego. However, if you play your cards right, and you're a minimalist, and you can deal with tougher situations, maybe a smaller living arrangement, then maybe that $3,600 a month will take you far. But you got to be smart about your money. The cool part is that you do get an additional allowance for housing, and it should help alleviate some of the burden of paying for rent. Now let's switch it up. Let's go to Virginia for that same E3. You're going to get $22,968 a year, which comes out to $1,914 a month. So as you can see, that's a drastic change. But it's based off of the duty station location, the zip code, where your base is. And each location, the military, comes out and they do a study every year, and they try to adjust it to make it fair across the board. So your BAH is going to change depending on where you live and what the cost of living is in that area. So let's move on from BAH. Oops. All right, let's move on from BAH, and let's go talk about basic needs allowance. Through current military compensation military compensation largely equals or exceeds private sector wages for comparable jobs, military families may still encounter financial hardships. Several benefits are available to assist service members with financial challenges, including basic needs allowance. Eligibility for basic needs allowance is based on gross household income, household size, and assigned duty station of a service member. A service member may be eligible for BNA if their preceding calendar year's gross household income falls below 130% of the same year's federal poverty guidelines for their duty location and household size. Service members with qualifying large households and low income are most likely to be eligible for monthly BNA entitlements. Now look, we don't get paid a whole ton of money in the military. Now you ask some congressional leaders, they may have a different opinion, but at the end of the day, we really don't. So when if you're in a situation where you're in the military and your family's growing, maybe you have a spouse who's not working because they got injured or they're just not qualified, or maybe you have kids and it's cheaper for your spouse to stay home and watch your kids, and you're struggling at that point due to inflation being what it is. There are programs out there such as the Basic Needs Allowance that you can apply for, and it'll provide a monthly compensation to help you out, so that way your family's not struggling. Now let's talk about clothing allowance. Clothing allowances may be issued to help members pay for their uniforms. There are 4 main types of clothing allowance. There's an initial, which is typically given to you in boot camp. There's a replacement, a maintenance, and an extra. And there's different situations for each type of clothing allowance. Both officers and enlisted members of the U.S. Armed Forces are entitled to an initial clothing allowance. Officers are only entitled to allowance once, except in the situation noted below. So officers fall into a different category. Cash clothing replacement allowance. The allowance is payable only to enlisted members annually following initial clothing allowance on the anniversary month. This is for the replacement of uniforms based on normal wear and tear. So look, you may be in a field situation. You may go on a deployment. You may go on a ship. You may be out and about. You may be on the range constantly, and your uniform is going to be subject to wear and tear. Fortunately, the military will give you a stipend every year to replace those uniforms, and that kind of helps alleviate the financial burden that you have to incur. Let's talk about dislocation allowance. The purpose of dislocation allowance is to partially reimburse a service member with or without dependents for the expenses incurred in relocating the member's household on a PCS. A PCS is a permanent change of station. Housing moves ordered for the government's convenience or incident to an evacuation. This allowance is in addition to all other allowances authorized in this volume and may be paid in advance. Now, when you change location over 50 miles from one duty station to the next, you're going to do what's called a PCS, a permanent change of station. When you do your permanent change of station, the military or the Marine Corps in this instance that we're talking about is going to pay you more money. And the same is going to apply for every branch of service. You're going to get paid for that move. Now, whether you do a Diddy move, which is a do-it-yourself move, where you go rent a U-Haul truck or whatever, you load that up and you move it to your next location, or you leave it on the military to go ahead and handle your move. Well, they'll come to your home of residence, they'll pack up your household goods, they'll load it in a truck, and they'll deliver it to your next duty station location of the address that you give them. So if you rented an apartment or you purchased a home, they'll deliver it to your doorstep, which is another benefit incurred due to the fact that you're being ordered to move to a new duty station location. Now, with that being said, hopefully I've covered down and given you some insight on some of the financial benefits that you can gain while joining, the military. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully you learned about the financial benefits awarded to you from joining the United States Marine Corps. For more information, stay tuned. We got more videos coming your way. Have a good day.